My name is Megan Myers. I am an associate professor of Spanish at Iowa State University, and I'm really excited to be here virtually to just go through and share a presentation that I did alongside Stacy and John recently at the ATSP conference in Atlanta, Georgia. So this presentation is about modeling mentorship in a specific area of the SPR journal. I'll just give a little background briefly about my connection to SPR. I began as a graduate student associate editor the first year with David Wiseman when SPR launched years ago. I shouldn't say years ago, but about six or 7 years ago now. So I began as an associate editor and also a peer reviewer. And then when I finished my PhD, finished my doctoral degree at Vanderbilt University, I then became a managing editor. So I became a managing editor of what was previously called social media and now has just moved to communications to more accurately describe all of the things that that position does. So I'm going to talk about how I then mentored a current graduate student to take on the role of managing editor and what that process might look like. So what is the process, right? So a goal for me personally, like I just mentioned, was to transition from this associate editor role as a graduate student to a managing editor. As you'll see, if you look through the SPR website, there are currently 12 associate editors who are all graduate students. And the role for a lot of these committed and interested, engaged graduate student associate editors is to take on a different role within the journal, right? And I'll note that these types of positions, this type of experience as a graduate student is just, it's really unparalleled as far as progressing in these type of editorial roles in the future. It's opened a lot of doors for me, and maybe I'll touch on that at the end of the presentation. So the goal is to transition, right, from associate editor to managing editor for a lot of these current graduate students. So most recently, I worked with a current graduate student, Lillian Jones, to transition her from this associate editor position into the managing editor position. So we had virtual meetings and email check-ins. We worked together for about a year before she transitioned into the managing editor role. So one thing that was really great was that we were able to collaborate when I was still in the role of managing editor and she was an associate editor. And obviously 2 is always greater than 1. So we were able to work on a couple ideas together that were vastly improved by brainstorming alongside one another virtually. So one thing we did was we thought about creating this survey for past graduate students who published in the journal. So you can see here this tweet, right? These testimonials. So what would you recommend to other graduate students? What was great about the process? What wasn't so great? So we have this really interesting survey, and the results we will be sharing online and also on Facebook, Twitter, right, and social media, as well as the website for SPR. And then also we improved the author spotlight. This is something that I had begun to do, but Lillian kind of took it to another level. We include more information. She kind of redid the formatting of the PDF that we share online. So these are things that we improved together, which was a really great way to collaborate between the managing editor and the associate editor. Lillian also brought a fresh perspective, right? I think one thing that's really great that SPR does is have these graduate students, current graduate students, hopefully like many of you are listening, in these actual roles of managing editors and associate editors, because you bring a fresh perspective and you bring this perspective that connects to today's graduate students. One thing Lillian did was she started to use polling on our Facebook page, for example, which was able to increase our audiences and kind of give them a different way to engage with the page. You can see the example here on this slide. And also she started doing more weekly posts that she would schedule, right? So here you can see Happy Friday, and she always had this hashtag Friday humor, Friday funny, and often the times they were related to graduate student life or publishing, right? I liked that addition of hers. Finally, I mentioned this before, how we had these surveys and testimonials, but I also think it's important, in that light to think about, and reflect on just mentoring and the role of mentoring and how important it is for graduate students. So I'll say that some of the mentorship experience, and I mentioned this before, that I had as a graduate student working with SPR, what it's done for me, that mentorship has allowed me to take on these editorial roles today as a associate professor. So just as an idea, I began as a graduate student working as an associate editor for SPR. I also was the assistant editor for a journal that was housed on campus at Vanderbilt, the Afro-Hispanic Review. And now today I'm on the editorial board of the Afro-Hispanic Review. I worked as the managing editor then for SPR and continue to peer review. I also am a managing editor of Hispania with AATSP, and I also am a co-editor of a section of a journal in community engagement and service learning research. So that experience has really opened doors for me as far as editorial positions on other journals. And I think that's all due to the mentorship I had as a graduate student in these types of roles. So it's a really wonderful experience and opportunity. So I just wanted to kind of end there and encourage graduate students to seek out SPR and these associate editor positions and roles. And if that doesn't work for you, thinking about the time or just, the responsibilities you might want to take on, consider just being a peer reviewer, having that experience of going through the peer review process as a graduate student is key. And most journals encourage graduate student reviewers. So look to journals that you read a lot and possibly look online, see if they have somewhere where you can sign up to be considered as a peer reviewer for articles that are published in your field of expertise. Thank you so much.